What's the quickest you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? A guy at my work was caught playing World of Warcraft for hours every day. The boss called him in, told him it was completely unacceptable, and warned him to stop immediately or he'd be fired. Less than an hour later, IT tells the boss the guy is back in his office playing again. He was let go that day. A new guy showed up to work completely hammered and tried to operate a forklift right in front of the regional safety manager. That day was full of forklift certified and right in front of my OSHA handbook memes. Orientation second day. He's to sit in a conference room and read through binders of important info. Our boss walks out and closes the door. It has a window with blinds open to see through. Going about our day, and the boss asks us why the conference door's locked and blinds closed. Nobody is sure, so they get security to open the door to see this fucking guy kicked back with the lights off asleep. He had closed the blinds and locked the door. Of course he was out there that day. Kid came in on his first day thinking he could boss everyone around since he just finished culinary school, strike one. Caught him later that day vaping in the prep area of the kitchen, strike two. He asked on his second day if he could leave for 30 minutes to make a drug deal. Needless to say, that was strike three. A coworker sent an email to a female team member saying he had a dream that they got married and he impregnated her. She sat across from me, and I saw her reaction as she read it. Her expression changed, then she headed to the manager's office. After she left, he got called in, and within a minute, he was packing his things. From the time he sent the email to getting fired, it took less than 5 minutes. This guy shows up, the VP is gloating how great and brilliant he is, blah blah blah. First day, doesn't come in until 10 a.m. Next day same deal, like working from 10 to 12 then leaving. Meanwhile they flew him on a business trip leaving Wednesday, and supposed to come back Friday. At the last second he rebooked himself on a midnight flight. Meanwhile on the Friday flight back at the last second he was like, oh, I have to take a different flight, and he just disappeared. What Mr. Mysterious didn't realize is most of us used to work at his previous employer. Someone sent us a text, hey, I thought you hired blah blah blah, he's making copies right now. Turns out he was working 2 jobs. These are both science/tech companies with not that strict NDAs, but you can't work at a potential competitor simultaneously. He was fired from both jobs. During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera. 1 hour in. A guy refusing to wear safety gear/PPE on his first day. He flat out said no to the supervisor, who then fired him. He didn't even make it to the first coffee break. If he was that adamant about not wearing safety gear, it wasn't a good sign. I once saw a new coworker get fired on their first day during lunch. They loudly bragged about how they lied on their resume to get the job. Unfortunately, they didn't realize the boss was sitting right behind them. By the time we got back to the office, their desk was already cleared out. They were gone before we even finished our afternoon coffee. It is just insane how stupid some people are. I worked on an IT help desk. It was me and another guy. He quit because there was no room for growth. They hired this guy who supposedly had 25 years of experience in IT. I was tasked with training this guy. He was an older guy and was so deaf he couldn't hear the phone ringing. I had to show him how to do the same things over and over again, like how to install a printer. I even made training documentation, but instead of reading that he would just ask me to show him. He was a high school football coach on the side, and that's all he talked about. After a week I went to the boss and said this guy is useless to me. The boss sat with him for 2 hours at his desk and he was fired the next day. I felt bad, the guy lost his job, but he was not absorbing any info and I was doing 2 jobs. We hired an IT guy who was just well weird. Didn't seem to do much but was always out and about taking to people. Whatever, not my department. Then I heard he got fired. He was asked to help the CEO with his computer. The guy walked into the executive offices, acted weird and like he knew everyone, rude and inappropriate to the secretaries, then walked into the CEO's office and took one look at his computer and said, "No wonder it's not working, Macs are shit." Spent 10 minutes ripping into the CEO about his poor choice of computer and complaining about his job, then got asked to leave. Never saw him again after that. Small family company that in my lifetime, 34 years, went from 3 to 80 employees. One woman has been there 30 years and almost feels like a family member. Her daughter struggled with mental issues in high school, and in therapy it came out that she had been sexually abused as a kid by an older kid. Others corroborated the story. Because it was never an official charge, that's the type of thing that doesn't show up on a background check. A few years pass, her daughter goes to college, meets a great guy, gets engaged, her life is going well. And I hire a new warehouse worker. I'm doing his onboarding and bring him to the office for introductions. The mom's face drops. She pulls me aside. I had hired the abuser. I told him an unforeseen conflict had come up and I wouldn't contest unemployment. Those are the types of situations they don't really prepare you for in management. I ran the college onboarding software developer group for a large telecom. The first day onboarding was with HR and health insurance /401k/ etc. All that really mundane stuff. I would sit in the back of the room and watch to see the incoming group to see how they react to corporate life. One guy asks HR person how soon they get promoted. Said that the person that hired him said it would be within 2 weeks and he would be a director within a few months. I hired him. He was sent home before the first coffee break at 10 a.m. 2 girls started hitting on the other guys in the room. Like flirting beyond anything I have ever seen. Offered one guy a blowjob. She lasted till lunch. 3 so many drunk/drugged I can't count or remember them all. Hired my friend's sister as a hostess at our restaurant. She called off for her first shift 3 hours later, telling me that she was having a tough period. 30 minutes into her dinner shift she started posting pics on Instagram of her being at a party in Canada. We live in New York. Fired her via Insta. Never even worked, then tried to claim unemployment, then had her father call me and try to threaten me into rehiring here. She was 34. Guy came in and got certified on the first half of the job. We put him in a forklift for part 2 and he went to his car on break. Came back drunk to the point of being obvious. That's when I found out we have a breathalyzer on site. Great part, they made him call a friend for a ride. They drove out of sight, immediately turned around and came back. Dude sprinted into our parking lot and drove his car away. We had to call the cops because he technically left work in a vehicle while drunk. Years back I worked a ski season in Europe. They bus the staff all the way out to the Alps from London via the Channel ferry, all in all about 18 hours transit. It's not unusual for everyone to enjoy themselves and get a bit merry, as long as you don't cross the line. One chap gets absolutely bladdered, ends up getting aggressive, attempts to fight a couple of his new colleagues, and ends up passed out in his seat with puke all down him. We finally arrive at the resort and as we're getting off the bus, the regional manager tells him to stay put and not to bother taking his bags off. New driver gets on and off he goes, straight back to London with 18 hours to think about how bad he fucked up. I warned them not to hire her. She worked at a bank and 2 weeks after opening an account for my 15-year-old son she looked him up on Facebook and sent him a friend request. He doesn't even know her. Now she was applying for a job at a high school. Day 1 after work. Threw a party with said high schoolers. Fired. I warned them. A new hire PC repair tech whose resume came with 6 years experience. I handed him an installation CD for Windows XP, instructed him to format and reload the 3 desktop computers on the bench in front of him and he just looked at me like a deer in headlights. He was gone before morning break. I work in a kitchen and literally just yesterday, new guy start at 5 a.m., claims to have 20 plus years experience, gets frustrated that he is struggling with some basic recipes, slams the oven door and breaks it, then walked out at 6:30 a.m. I would be lying if I said I haven't witnessed this more than once at all the different places I've cooked at. I worked a mall job in the 1990s at electronics boutique. Pokemon had just come out and we got this new guy for Christmas help who was just the strangest person ever. His first shift he just sat behind the counter opening up packs of Pokemon cards, and when confronted he yelled, "I am going to pay for them." Duh. He was walked out by the manager about 15 seconds later. That was a really dumb kid.